You do take criticism for a living. That is what a film editor does. He or she sits there and takes criticism for a living.
Lights out. It's a great start from Harrison as Todd squeezes past Norbury on the run to mere hairpin.
Hi everyone, welcome to Wedio Academy. My name is Rory Nichols, and today I'm going to be talking to you about film editing, the process of film editing. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you enjoy it. I just wanted to sort of take you through a couple of processes that I do before I start editing a new project, which should just give you some useful sort of tips and insight going forward, I hope. As you can see up here, this is the hard drive that we use to record the interviews to. What I'll normally do with this is obviously I'll have a quick look through the footage on the actual hard drive itself. And then basically what I'll go ahead and do is I'm just going to go ahead and open Premiere Pro straight away. I use Mac mainly, so I work off of an iMac, and I normally have another monitor, sort of a dual screen setup going on. It just helps for space. It means I can have my Premiere project and my timeline open on one sort of one desktop, and on the other one I can have my sort of emails and web browser, that type of thing. And a good second monitor, I like a lot of BenQ products, so I'd recommend having a look there. With whatever hardware you're using as well, it doesn't just have to be a Mac-based product. You can use Windows as well, or Linux as well. I haven't really used Linux very often as an operating system, but I just like Macs, and that's what I've always worked in. But Windows is also just as good. So I'm just going to go ahead and start sort of creating an entirely new project. So obviously this is the top level of Premiere Pro when you open it. I'm just going to make that full screen. And then what I'm going to go do is I'm going to go hit New Project. Now, this is the window you're going to see when you hit New Project. So go ahead and give your project a name. So we'll say Rory Nichols. And then with all these settings, I normally just leave them the same because these are just sort of Premiere's default settings here for all of these. So it's sort of your captured video, audio, and so on, your previews, it's all going to be saved within your local user documents folder. And I just leave it there because I can change it at any time I'd like, or if I'm working on an external hard drive, I'll set it to the external hard drive. Now let's jump straight in. So if I hit OK, cool. So obviously here, this is the project. This is sort of, at the moment, it's in the graphics window here. But if we go over and start with the learning tool, because this is a cool feature within this platform for new users. Adobe have tried to help out new users to the software as much as they can. So they actually include a learning tab at the very start of your sort of post-production workflow within the tool. So over here, you have a Premiere Pro overview where they can go through all the sort of different windows used within the software, some basic editing skills here, and some more stuff here, which is all sort of interactive videos and stuff like that. But I'm going to show you initially the first few phases of a project when you get started. So if we go over to the assembly window, this is where we're able to load in a lot of our footage and basically just have a look through it and sort of start getting organized, So if I go into my Finder tab, I'll just drag all these in. So you can do the drag and drop method, or you can do this where you hit right click and import. And then here you'll actually be able to find your drive, so over here, and select the clips you want to import. What I normally like to do straight off the bat is I like to have a look at these and start organizing them into bins, which are essentially folders within the project. So I always start, normally this is how I create my bins. So I'll do a sequence bin. That's going to include all of my Premiere Pro sequences that I build throughout this project. I do a footage bin, which basically will include all the rushes. So all these video clips will go into that bin. I'll do an audio bin as well, which is also obviously pretty self-explanatory for all the audio I use throughout this project. And then also I like to do an artwork bin, because in Premiere we're normally working with lots of different graphics and stuff like that to build titles and so on. So it's always good to just have it all organized and have it structured before you even start editing. Now, to have a look at this footage, instead of clicking on these sort of individually like I can here, look, there you go, there's a clip of me. What I like to do is I actually like to, down here, you can, this is how you're going to view these clips within your project window, which is what this tab is here, it's your project window. Now, if I go to here, I can actually, it gives me little thumbnails. And what I can actually do is I can actually scrub through this footage. Here's some B-roll footage of Sophie, and I can see, exactly what's happening, so I know what's what. and yeah, just sort of, you know, what's going on. So what I'll do is I'm just going to grab all of the clips that have me in. My interview, and what a really good one to use so you can select multiple clips at the same time is just hold the shift key within Premiere, and it means you can select more than one clip at a time. And what I'll do is I'll right click on this and hit new bin from selection, and then what I'll do is I'll call this Rory interview. So there you go, I know all of my interview clips within that folder, and then I'll drag and drop this into my footage folder. And I'm going to do the same here with Sophie. So if I hold shift, I'll be able to select all of these. There we go. So I'll select these and I'll drop them into a new bin, and we'll call this Sophie footage. And then we will drop that into our footage folder as well. And then here's all the B-roll of each of us. So what I can do now is, because I'm pretty familiar with what clips are which, so just quickly scrub through these, just make sure I'm getting all the right ones in the right folder. Cool, so this is all of my B-roll. So drag that into a new bin, or you can do the right click, new bin from selection, and we're going to do Rory B-roll, and we'll drag that into a footage folder, into the footage folder as well, and then we'll do the same with Sophie as well. So everything's nice and organized. I think I went over that in my interview, that, you know, it's very easy with very big complicated projects that you sort of lose where you're at within it. So always keep it structured right from the beginning and really familiarize yourself with where you're storing things and how you're labeling them, because trust me, the bigger the project gets, the more messier it can become really quickly. So it's always good to just keep an eye on it. Now, what I can actually do is I actually can start assembling a sequence within this window, but instead of doing that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go straight to the editing tool and start talking about the editing tab, and start talking about exactly what's going on here, because for someone opening this for the first time, I'm sure it does look a little bit confusing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just talk you through the basic stages of what is happening here. Now, these two windows here, so this one here is your sort of like your preview window, and this is your timeline window, right? So this is referencing this clip here, A005. C023, and then this will be whatever's in my timeline. So what I'll go ahead and do is I'll go down to this one, which is a new item, and I'll go to sequence. So I'll start a new sequence. You've got loads of different sort of codecs and structures you can actually work from as a sequence. You can also import presets if you've got those. So if you're doing like Instagram content, you can import presets that are already in 9:16 for social media, which is also really handy. But for the purpose of this video, we're going to go and work in an ARRI 1080p timeline at 25 frames per second, because that is what is native to us here in the UK. So I'm going to go ahead and call this Rory Nichols. What I'm going to do is this will then pop up here as a new timeline. As you see, it's created 3 video tracks and 4 audio tracks for me as well. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead and put that in the sequence bin, and then I'll just start having a look through some of my footage. Now, what's kind of cool initially to do straight off the bat is color code your footage. So we know that these 3 clips here are my interview. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down to the label option, and I'll make these yellow. So basically what that does is it's just a nice way of keeping it organized, so I always know in the timeline what is interview footage and what is not. Now, what I'll do here is this will obviously give me my preview, so this is what I can actually do, have some control here before it even touches my timeline. So what I did there is I just quickly scrubbed through and I selected an in using the keyboard shortcut I, and then I selected an out using the keyboard shortcut O. And then what I can do is I can either press one of these, so insert, so that will basically drop it into my timeline, or as you saw there, you can press the comma key on your keyboard to drop that into the timeline, as I just did there. Or what you can do is I'll just Command Z or Control Z if you're on a Windows to undo, or what you can do is I can just drag the whole thing in. You know, I can drag the whole picture in, which is really good. And the reason this is happening, this warning, don't ever worry about this, it's fine, it's a straightforward fix. Basically what's happening here is this footage was shot 4K, and the timeline at the moment is HD, so that's 1920 by 1080. So basically Premiere is telling me the original footage, the raw footage, doesn't match my sequence. So basically what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to hit keep existing settings, but you see how much it's zoomed in over here. It's really zoomed in on my face here. So what I'll do is I'll actually right click on this and I'll hit set to frame size. There we go. So now it's sort of sized me up a bit and put me proportionately within the timeline so we can actually see me, so it's not so scaled up. Now what I'll do here is just have a little watch through this. Everything's looking good here, all good, cool. And as you can see, it's coming up as yellow in my timeline. Now what I'll do here quickly is I'll just quickly grab some B-roll of myself as well, so we can start. So remember, in and out here, scrub through this. So maybe I quite like that, the sort of pull focus there. And then I'll just go like that with the out, with the O key, and I'll just drag and drop this in the timeline. Now there we go, this has been dragged and dropped, and as you see, that's scaled up quite significantly as well. So just hit set to frame size. Now, I'm going to go through some sort of useful tips when you are doing sort of video editing, which is nice. So what we're going to do is I'm going to quickly talk to you first about keyboard shortcuts and what they mean, basically. So obviously, as you know, video editors and film editors, a lot of anything to make our process quicker is welcomed, because it's a very sort of lengthy practice of reviewing the footage, organizing the project before you even start editing, and then when you're actually in the thick of editing, it obviously speeds up your workflow. So if you go up to here, up to the Premiere Pro tab, and you go into keyboard shortcuts, as you can see, this basically brings up an entire sort of key sort of layout for what all the tools do, and sort of why they're useful. Now, as you can see here, I've got a keyboard layout preset, which is called Rory keys. And basically the reason I've done that is because this is mine. I've been using this tool for a really long time, so I like to set up mine in a way that suits my workflow to make it faster. But what you can actually do is, say if you, like me, will learn on a different editing tool, what you can actually do is you can set that. So originally when I was at university, I learned on Final Cut Pro 7. So if you're coming into this tool, they've actually made it really handy for users of the different editing tools to actually be able to just work within this framework, and feel comfortable within it. So you've got the Final Cut Pro 7 keys there. So look, if I change that, it changes all the keyboard shortcuts within Premiere. And then also they've got Avid Media Composer 5, which is another tool that I used to use. And then obviously you've got the Adobe Premiere Pro defaults, which looks like this. Or you can have, your own keys. And basically down here, this is where you can type in a name of something. So here's everything, here's all these can be keys, all these different things, exporting frames, expand all tracks, multicam cameras, all of that type of stuff. You can set all of this yourself. Now, it's always good to obviously remember and just get used to it. I commonly recommend that if you're starting from scratch, you just work within the basic Adobe Premiere Pro keys. And then as you move forward in your careers, you'll be able to adapt these keys to, the type of work you're doing, and the workflow you use. If you're not someone who uses multicam footage a lot and works with that, you're not going to need certain tools that are, specific for the multicam editing, right? So those are the keyboard shortcuts, and there's some really good ones here. Like I like to have the G as my add edit, so I'll just quickly show you what that does on my timeline. So instead of pressing C to bring up, as you saw there, it brought up my razor blade tool, and pressing on the clip, going like this sort of throughout the clip. What I like to do is I much prefer just pressing a single key, so I like to just press G, right? So that's what I've set mine to, right? And it's the add edit tool. If you're wondering, and it's just super handy because what I can do is, say if I've got lots of video tracks on here, what I can actually do is I can go like this, select both and hit G, and it does a hard cut on both of the tracks on V1 and V2. So yeah, super handy one for if you're working with a lot of video tracks, which commonly you will be going forward. Now, I'll just give you an overview of the timeline itself. So a useful tip, as you see what I'm doing there, scaling up and down, which is quite handy if I want to sort of zoom in on this footage and really see these waveforms or the start of this clip or whatever. What I can do is I can just hit the minus and plus on my keys and it scales my timeline up and down. Now another useful tool is the command or control, if you're on a Windows, plus. So what that does is it actually makes my video tracks a lot larger in scale. And now if I hold Alt and plus, it makes my audio tracks a lot larger in scale, which is super handy for when, if I'm doing some audio editing, I obviously want to see all the waveforms and see where this is starting, where it's stopping. Obviously here we've got a bit of a gap where I stopped speaking for a little while. But yeah, that's just a super one to know. So I'm always, I can always see what's going on and I can see it closer in, which is nice. You can actually control the scale up and down using this. But again, as an editor, it's much better to use your keys and rely less on your mouse, just because it's a much faster editing workflow. Now, I'll just go through and talk to you about the tools over here, which we've got. So here's your sort of immediate tools within Premiere. So basically, obviously this is our selection tool, which gives us the mouse cursor, which basically allows us to sort of select stuff like this and click on it and it just selects that clip, or we can select multiple ones and we can move them up and down the timeline or move them wherever we please. Now this one is the track select forward tool, which is handy if you're trying to move a lot of tracks forward at the same time to create space maybe for something at the beginning of the edit which you want to put in but you've already completed an offline sequence. So what I can do is if I just click on this, it selects all the clips going forward. If I just click on this, it only selects that one. So again, a handy tool if you're just trying to quickly make some space. Then we've got the ripple edit tool, which basically, it trims the footage and then snaps it back to whatever time code. I don't know if you saw there, but as you can see, the time code is going up there because what I'm doing is I'm cutting away some of the beginning, but instead of doing this way, where I just make a cut, I'll make a cut sort of here, and then I have to press V to get my selection tool and delete that, and then delete that space and bring it back. What I'm doing with the ripple tool is if I just press B on my keyboard, I'm automatically telling Premiere to take away that time in the time code that comes up in my sequence monitor, and then it's going to snap it back automatically for me. So again, that's a really handy tool, especially if we're doing stuff like this where we want to trim a bit of what I'm saying, maybe up to the point here where I go quiet, and then this next clip here comes in. So it's just a lot smoother editing process again, and just makes your life easier when you're working with lots of different clips on a timeline. Now, let's say sort of a good technique as well for this, right, is you don't want to make hard cuts and then obviously just have no audio running underneath this because we are editing an interview. So normally in this case, I would have music and maybe some sound effects all on these audio tracks to really just heighten the mood and sort of add value to everything I'm doing within this interview and just make it seem more cinematic and seamless. We're not going to do that for the purpose of this video. However, one useful tip I will say is that if you're going to make a cut to new footage, what's always a good thing to do is if you leave the audio underneath running. Now you don't always have to do this, but it just sounds a lot nicer. And obviously to hide harsh cuts, say if I like the beginning of what I'm doing here, right? So let me just get rid of that beginning bit, but then I want to only have this of me talking, but I don't want my sort of image here. I want a different image. So what I'm going to do is going to pull this back and have this overlying on top, so that basically as I'm talking, you just getting B-roll of me editing, and then I go back to my interview, and then what I'll do is I'll add in some more B-roll basically, and what it does is it covers the jump cuts, because that's what we don't want in this, right? So say if I delete that, but I actually turn this off. So if you want to turn off a single video track, by the way, you just press Command-Shift-E, and what it does is it just hides the track for now. You haven't deleted it from the timeline. You've just basically told Premiere Pro to hide it from your timeline, essentially, for now. Now, say if we have those out, obviously I've deleted a bit in the middle of this, you're going to see a jump cut, which for a viewer is going to look a bit harsh. right? So you see there, that's what we call like sort of like a harsh cut. So where it's sort of, it hasn't naturally done it. It's kind of cut quite abruptly and quite quickly. Now for some stuff like YouTube content and stuff, this can be forgiven, but if you're doing stuff for branded films, for advertising, for TV shows, or for feature films, you know, this is the type of thing we want to avoid, which is why to hide the cut, which is good, we'll turn this back on, so Command Shift E on the same clip. And because obviously we, let me just drag this out as well. So obviously here's me beginning to talk, so I just play this through. So here's me sort of sat here, and then it cuts quite nicely there to me on the computer, and then I'll cut back to me talking. So you see it's covered the cut, so it's not as harsh to the spectators, which is nice. Yeah, that's the type of editing we want to do. Now, say if I want this clip to start with me sort of like this, and then I want it to go to my B-roll. But say if I want to stay on the B-roll for a bit longer, but I want to continue hearing me talking down here, what I'll do is I'll extend this shot out a bit. And then what I'll do is I will unlink this. So if you go up to here to unlink, and basically what that does is it makes the video and the audio two separate entities now. You know, as before, it was all connected like what this one is. So everything that I do to the visual track changes on the audio track as well. However, now what I can do is I can just extend this and keep my voice, as you see here, going underneath that B-roll clip, right? So that's another cool technique, because as well, it just makes it, you don't want to, again, make the spectators or the viewers feel sort of recognize where you've cut. You want to do your best to mask it, basically, because that's the purpose of a film editor. You know, it's part of our job to sort of hide cuts and make it as seamless as possible within our timeline. Now, say if I want to add a title card or something like that at the beginning of this to just introduce who I am and introduce the scene as well. So I'll just trim this actually back a little bit, so we get to my next shot a bit quicker. There we go. And then it cuts back to me. So say if I want to do that, so what I'll do is up here, you've got your full sort of workflow for post-production to create a film, basically, which is super handy. Premiere Pro lays it out really nicely for you, even if you've not really used the software before. It structures it in a way that's easy to understand. So basically, I'll just quickly talk to you about these. So obviously the color tab is basically everything. As you can see right now, I'm a bit sort of washed out, a bit flat. So what I'll do is I'm actually going to import a LUT. Now a LUT is basically a color profile from the camera, which basically, when you're shooting something, it allows the directors, producers, or the clients to actually see what it could look like in a grade, and when you're actually doing your color corrections. So it's a handy thing to have, and what it does as well, which is quite nice, is it gives you a base to work from. So I'm just quickly going to go grab my LUT, so just bear with me a moment. So here's my LUT here, the Blackmagic Film to Extended Video V4. I'm going to hit open, and there we go. It's added some color to the scene. So not a lot, vast amounts of color, but enough to help us, enough to give us an idea. Just do it to all these clips as well. So just add this in. And most of the time, if you're not given a LUT from the camera, most of the cameras that directors and film crews shoot on will have an inbuilt LUT. And like I say, it will depend whatever production you're working on, whether they give it to you or not. But it is always useful to have, because it gives you an idea of sort of a base and sort of a look they were going for. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to talk to you about what's happening in the various windows here. So over here on the left, this is called a histogram. So basically what it does, this one is the histogram. This one actually, I'm just going to turn those back off, so this one is a waveform. So basically what this is doing is it measures the color within this frame. So as you can see, we've got some red here, some greens and orange and blue and so on and so forth. Now 0 is pure, 0 is black and 255 is white. And basically, as at the moment you can see, the scene is quite dark. So what we want to do is we want to try and brighten it up a little bit. And you'll want to be careful, because you never want to go over these two numbers. You never want it to be too dark, you never want it to be too light, because what happens then is the video will fail broadcast specs if you're delivering delivering to a broadcaster for something to go onto the TV, or for social it'll actually make your video look a lot worse. So using the scopes is something I can't stress enough, because it does really help you out when you are color correcting. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to lighten the scene up a little bit, up the exposure, not too much. I'm going to add a little bit of contrast in as well, just to sort of separate those colours a bit nicely as well. Always reflecting back to what's going on here on my waveforms. I'm going to crush the blacks a little bit, so not too much. There we go. So I'll just do that a little bit. And I'm going to take the shadows down a bit in this as well. So we'll just have a look, scan through another part, see how that's looking. Yeah, that's looking quite nice. And then I'm going to up the highlights a little bit. Cool. And then what I'll also do is I will go through and up the exposure another little touch there. Okay, cool. So that's looking a lot better than this at the moment, right? And that's just some really quick basic color corrections. Now, if I've done color correcting on this clip, but I want it to be replicated on this clip and this clip, what I'll do is I'll go to my effect controls, right? So I'll highlight my lumetri color and I'll hit Command C or Control C. I'll select my next clip and I'll hit Control V. And then my next clip after that, I'll hit Control V again. Now, as you'll see, what it's done is it's added those, for this shot actually, what I'll do is I'll just set these all to basic again, to default, because with this shot we need to work with it slightly differently because it was filmed in a different room. So yeah, pretty happy just doing some minor adjustments here. Great, yeah, that's fine. And then with this shot as well, what we're gonna do is we're just, I see, yes. So we're just gonna remove that. Okay, cool, so there you go. So every single shot now has a certain look and feel, which I think looks a bit better to what we actually want, which is close to what we actually want. Obviously, normally you'd spend a lot more time doing this and a lot more touching up. And you've also got all of these different tabs you can use. You've got all your curves in this window. You've got your color wheels and your color match. To sort of, you got your HSL secondary as well, which is a really useful tool. And you can also add vignettes and so on. But for the purpose of this video, I'm not going to go through that today. Now, what you can do as well is I'll just quickly talk to you before we move on actually about what's going on in the effect controls window, which I'll just go back to my editing tab. Which lives with you throughout, and it's where you make a lot of changes to what's going on in your video. So the position by default within Premiere is always 960 by 540. So basically that's centered. Now if I move the 960 over to the left or to the right, as you can see, I'm moving the image there. So I'll just set that back to 960. And if I move the 540, I'm moving it up and down. Right, so there we go. So that's moving up and down. Now, set that back to 540. Our scale is pretty self-explanatory, but it's basically scales it up and down. So you can scale this. So I might actually scale this a little bit more there, maybe to 50 to get rid of the black bars on the top and the bottom. Cool. So there you go. So that's scaled up a little bit more, which is nice. And then you have rotation, which basically rotates your image around in 360 degrees. So I will just set that back to 0. And then your anchor point is basically the center point of this frame. So you can move this around depending on what you're doing, but most of the time you're fine to leave it there. And then you've got all your various blend modes here that you can sort of change depending on the type of stuff you want, which type of effect you want it to give. So you can put a hue on there, you can put a dissolve on the clip, whatever you need, whatever you'd like basically. So those are just some of the effects controls, which are great. And then down here, what you've actually got as well, you've got the media browser, which is quite good because you can go back to that original hard drive and click there. And you can actually just scan through this all within Premiere Pro. And then what you can do is you can right click and import all of these clips, or like one clip at a time, and that will go back into your project window here. And then you've got your effects tool, which has loads of built-in effects, which is great for Premiere that you can use to heighten your edit. And depending on the type of thing you're working on, if you're trying to do I'm not sure, say if you're trying to maybe put a crossfade in. So crossfades are commonly used to show the passing of time. So what I can do as a quick demonstration is I can actually click on here. I can actually right click on here and hit apply default transition. Now, as you can see, what's added is a cross dissolve, right? So that's like faded essentially into the next scene here. So it's quite a nice way to show the passing of time across dissolve, because obviously, that's what people use it for commonly, to actually show the passing of time between two scenes, or they use it at the end of a film to sort of fade out or the beginning. So it's up to you how you use that creatively, but that is quite a useful tool as well. And you can do that just by right clicking on the end of a clip and hitting apply default transitions. And then you can actually manipulate this all within the effects controls up here. So normally, say if I place this in the middle of a clip, so I'll just drop that down quick. There we go. So if I hit here, what it will do is, as you see, it's added it, and the cross dissolve goes over the end of this clip and the beginning of this one. So as you can see, the two frames sort of blend together. And as well, it's a common technique used in film to show the passing of time. So yeah, it's completely up to you how you use it. It just has to be used in the right way. I'm just going to sort of move on, just undo that. So remember Command Z or Control Z. I'm going to move on to the graphics tool. So let's say if I want to add, this is obviously an interview. So obviously I want people to know who I am. So what I'll do is I'll actually go over here to the start of this frame. And as you see, when I went over to the graphics tab, it actually brought up this window called Essential Graphics. Basically, this is loads of pre-built titles that come within Premiere that you can sort of drag and drop and use however you like, and sort of change up however you need them to, or you can actually create your own. If you go over to the Edit tab and you basically hit T on your keyboard, select anywhere in this frame. So I'll select over here. As you see, it's brought up a little cursor there, so I can actually go through and write out my details. So I'll just write out Rory Nichols. And my job title, for example, film editor. There we go. So what I'll do now is, if you don't like these titles as well, you've got all of your controls down here. So this is your positioning and your aligning. So that's centered. And what I can do now is I can move this left or right, or I can move it down, which I'm going to do. I'm going to go put it in the left-hand corner here. And quite a useful one to know as well, just to note, is going forward, if you use this, your safe margins, basically the outer box is action safe and the inside box is title safe. So sometimes you're allowed to sort of push this over your titles to go into the action safe, that's fine, but sometimes sort of broadcast delivery places like you to actually have it within the title safe there. And I'm also just going to make mine a little bit smaller, so let's make it 60, and I'll just pull this down a bit. And then I'm going to go and actually head and change the text as well, because I don't really like that text. So you can scrub through and you can just choose a text that you do like. There's loads of ones that come within Premiere. The only thing you want to make sure is, if you're doing something for a client, what you want to make sure you're doing is you're actually checking that the font is licensable before you're sending them the final video. Just because, a lot of the time, people think fonts are free when they're actually not. They do have to be licensed the proper way, and you can actually find yourself in a bit of bother if you don't have them licensed properly. So that's just like a very basic title. And then within here, appearance, you can actually change the stroke. You can change the background, you can add a background to it, you can actually add a shadow as well there, and you can change all the colors of all of these by clicking in the box there. So within these boxes you can change all the colors of your text and everything. So there's a very basic title there, so I'll just quickly go apply default transition, so the title sort of fades on like that. And that's a pretty quick and easy way just to make a graphic. Another useful thing you want to know is just be careful about moving anything within the top layers of within the sort of root file directory level. So what I mean by that is, it's quite a common thing people do, is they will go onto the Finder, or go into Finder, and what they'll actually do is, obviously I imported all of this directly from the top level of this hard drive. Now if I select all this and make a new folder and I call it Rushes, what's going to happen is all of it's going to go offline within Premiere, as you can see. There we go. So all of that's gone offline, and that's because I've added another folder to the file directory. So Premiere has lost its link to these files we were working with. So just be careful of that going forward. If you're ever moving anything, remember it's always going to be reflected in Premiere, and it will come up offline. Now, what you're going to do to get this back is you're going to go to Locate. You're going to select the drive or the folder you've just made. You're going to hit search, and what it's going to do is it's only going to, you can either untick this or tick this, display only exact name matches. I'll leave it ticked because basically it's going to go find C03, that clip within this folder. I'll hit search. There we go. So there's the clip, and then I'm going to hit OK. And then Premiere's smart enough to find the file directory for all those other offline files without you telling it to. It does it automatically if an exact name match comes up as well. So there's sort of a sort of basic sort of guide to the type of techniques you should use going forward when you are starting a project from scratch. I mean, honestly, the biggest thing is just stay organized, use your keyboard shortcuts and find a system that works well for you in your workflow and the type of work you're doing. Editing techniques, editing is fun. You should be enjoying yourself and taking sort of risks sometimes about how you can make a film better and the look and feel of that film as well. So yeah, just have fun with it. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to show you how to export. So I've just put my in and my out, remember I and O, on my timeline. And then what I'm going to do is up here, it gives me basically the codec that I want to export this film at. So let's say, remember earlier in the interview I was talking about containers and codecs. So with this, what I'm going to do is I can set it as like a QuickTime, but for this I'm going to set it as a H.264, which is basically an MP4. So this is actually the codec that it's going to write at. And basically here I can select my location of where I want it to be saved. So yeah, we'll save it straight back to that original drive. I'll hit save. And then here I can change all of this basically relates back to my timeline settings. So 1920, 1080 at 25 frames per second. So I'm not going to change any of that. I'm going to keep it the same as source. Here I can change my bit rate, which basically will make the video larger in its size because it's trying to up the quality a lot more. So let's say if you look down here, the estimated file size at the moment is 44 meg. If we sort of shoot that straight up to 50, change to 139 megs. So yeah, there's a big difference there. And then you can actually tick this box as well, which is use maximum render quality, which basically means Premiere and your machine's going to give you all of its sort of RAM and stuff to make sure your file's exporting properly and nicely without any problems. So yeah, we'll save that and we'll go ahead and export it. So here we go, it's going to export that now, and it's going to go to that location that we selected earlier. So here we go, it's appearing here. Just give it a couple of seconds. Cool. So there we go, we've got a little thing here saying your video is exported successfully, so that's great. If it never does, obviously it will send you a warning saying there's been a problem, and it will tell you what that warning is. And then we can just hit play on this. There we go, and there's our basic title. We are sort of quick color correcting, color grade, and our quick cuts between our clips there. So yeah, that's basically the process of starting something from scratch and moving it along this workflow here to actually deliver it. And like I say, this is very basic. This is just like sort of to give you guys a general overview of what Premiere is. There's so much more you can do with this tool. You can go very, very deep into it. And what I'm actually going to do now is I'm just going to quickly show you what a large scale project looks like. And this was a project that a few good productions did. I was the editor and the director for it, and Sophie Haines was the producer. I'm just going to not really show you, I'm going to take you through that project and just show you the difference between obviously this much smaller project we've started here and a large scale production project. So just bear with me a moment. So as you can see, this is how I lay out my projects. So I've got 3D, which is if I work with anything three-dimensional. I've got my artwork. I've got my audio, as you see, music, sound effects, VO. I've got an EDL if this gets sent to a grade. I've got a fonts folder. I've got a movies in folder with After Effects exports, camera rushes, downloads, movies out, which is all my exports for this, a production folder, sort of invoices, After Effects projects, DaVinci Resolve projects, and Premiere as well, and titles. So I'll just open this one up quick and show you guys. Okay, so as you can see, this project is opening. So this is how I laid out my project basically. So if I go back to editing, in my editing window, as you can see here, we've got a lot more going on within this timeline. So as you can see, I've still got my organization, the very sort of similar to the one that I just showed you. I've got my sequence, I've got my rushes, got my audio, got my artwork. But within here with my sequence, obviously we did various episodes for this. And the rushes, this is how I organized them. So I organized them per day and just GoPro as well. And here we have all of the best sort of added descriptions in for every single person we did, because we filmed terabytes worth of footage for this. My audio, I've got all of this. And then in my artwork, I've got all the various artwork I used. So basically this is what an offline, which is basically the rough edit for this film, which is what I'm going to show you what an offline sequence actually looks like. So this is my sequence for the offline. So as you can see here, it looks vastly different to the one we were just working in. We've got 10 tracks of audio. We've got 6 video tracks in here. And I know this might look a little bit intimidating, but this was a 10-minute episode for YouTube. So it required a lot of variation to it, and it was very, very fast, how we edited it and how it was cut. So this is basically sort of audio here. We've got music. We've got another bit of VO here, and these are all sound effects as we go through here. All of this stuff is sound effects and audio. But as you can see, I keep all my sound effects pretty much within these 3 here. I've got some music going on here again and music here. But basically, this is what a full editing timeline for sort of like a short form documentary will look like until we move into the online phase, where we compress all these tracks down and basically have sort of maybe 1 or 2 video tracks and 1 or 2 audio tracks once all the footage has been graded and mixed and mastered. But I just wanted to come in here and show you guys what a full editing timeline actually looks like and why organization is so important, because as you can see, things can get quite complicated very fast, and if you're not confident in exactly how and where your footage is, you will lose sight of that going forward, so just be careful with it. So there is quickly something I wanted to show you actually. So I get this a lot of the time about what a montage is, and basically a montage is a series of quick shots. So obviously with this one we were filming racing footage, so I'll just play this little section for you. So this essentially is a montage, at the moment you can't hear the music or the sound of the motorbikes, but it is there. And basically this is, fast-paced, energetic, and it's basically to create a thrill, for the audience. And that is something that you as an editor will be in charge of. So always remember that, it is a creative position you're in. It's a great opportunity for you. And I hope everything that I've shown you in today's video has helped, and thank you so much for watching my masterclass through Wedio Academy. I hope you enjoyed it and I hope you learned something from it. You can check out my work by visiting www.afewgoodproductions.com or visiting www.rorynichols.co.uk. Thank you so much and good luck.
And look at that! Spectacular from Harrison and Todd over Jeffrey's jump. Hard on the brakes into farm bends before a big wheelie over the finish as Harrison takes the 2021 Bob Smith Spring Cup.